Hello and welcome! Riven mods are being changed soon, and I'm going to tell you about the changes. First of all, though, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the current system, and then we'll talk about how it's changing. So these are Riven mods. They are these purple, shattery looking crystal things. You unlock the ability to get them after you complete the War Within. The way that you get them besides the War Within, after you finish it you'll get one for free, is from sorties. They are a possible drop from sorties. And when you get them, they'll be veiled, and they'll have some kind of challenge on them. So you see these are unveiled, and they tell you what weapon they're for and what they do. The veiled ones won't tell you what weapon they're for or what they do, and they will have a challenge on them. You put the veiled Riven mod into any applicable weapon, so these were both rifle Riven mods before, so I put them in whatever rifle, and then you do the challenge that's on the mod with the weapon equipped, with the Riven mod in the weapon. Once you're done, the mod will unveil itself, and you will get to see what weapon it is for and what stats it has. So it will look like these, except it won't be ranked up. If you'd like to see the process of a Riven mod getting unveiled, I made a video about that, which I'll recommend here, but keep in mind that that video's quality got kind of corrupted, so it's not too pretty to look at in the middle. It does demonstrate the process though, and the audio is just fine, so if you'd like to listen to it or just take a look, it's there if you'd like. Anyway, once you unveil your Riven mod, the stats and the weapon that you get are totally random. The mod will go into variations of a weapon, like if you get the Boltor, then you can put it in a Boltor Prime or a Telos Boltor or whatever, but you can only put it in that one weapon. So this can only go in a Zeuge, and this can only go in a Death Machine Rifle. You can get 2, 3, or 4 stats, so see this one has 2, and this one has 3, and you can also get negative stats. So as you see, this one has 3 stats, but one of them is minus damage to infested. There's a mastery requirement to equip these into a weapon as well. So I've seen between 9 and 16, but there's probably a greater range. As you can see, this one is MR12 in the bottom left corner, and this one is MR13 in the bottom left corner. Lastly, you can only have one Riven mod in a weapon at any given time. You can switch them out freely, everything like that. Now the stats on Riven mods can be re-rolled with Kuva, so if I click on this one, which is okay but mediocre, right? It says here that I can randomize the stats by paying Kuva. That's what that little red drop is, and you need 1,000 of it to re-roll the stats. Kuva comes from special events in level 30 plus Grineer missions. There's about a 25% chance for the event to spawn, and when you complete it, you get like 500 to 600 Kuva. So that's how you do that. When you re-roll stats, you often get less stats than you had before, and for that purpose, you can see how many times a Riven mod has been re-rolled in the bottom right corner. So you see that little like flippy arrow, and then there's a 1 next to it. That means this has been re-rolled once. Likewise, this one has also been re-rolled once. And the cost goes up each time, but at first it goes up only a little bit. It then goes up exponentially from there. So it starts at 900, and then it's 1,000, and then it gets more than 100 more the next time, and etc. When you reroll the mod, you have to unveil it again, so you don't get to see what you got right away, but you'll always get the same weapon, and the mod will stay ranked up if it was ranked up previously. Now lastly, you can only own 15 Riven mods at a time across your whole mod collection, so see here it says Riven Capacity 2. These are my 2 Riven mods, I can only have 13 more. And both veiled and unveiled Riven mods are tradable regardless of how many times they have been cycled. For very few credits too. Trade these for only 8,000 credits. Whereas with legendary mods, they cost like an insane amount of credits to trade. These don't cost that many credits to trade. So that's cool. Now for the changes. Keep in mind, even in the dev workshop itself, they didn't really list the changes all together, so it makes for kind of terrible reading, but it's linked in the description if you want to dig through it. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a condensed version, so with the current process behind Riven mods in mind, here are the changes. First of all, they're adding something called Riven Disposition. It's basically a modifier on how good stat rolls are for certain weapons that is inversely proportional to how strong the weapon already is. Quote, strong. So, for example, Tonkor Riven mods will be weaker than they currently are, and Bratton Riven mods will be stronger than they currently are. And yes, this will affect existing Riven mods as well as future ones, so when this patch drops, presumably this Death Machine Rifle Sadicon will actually get better. These numbers will get higher. I don't know by how much, but hopefully. I'll talk about this more in a minute because there's obviously like a problem with that term strong, but for now, you should keep in mind that Riven mods will be weaker than they currently are for meta weapons. Second thing, when you reroll a Riven mod, once this change happens, you won't have to unveil it again, ever. Once you unveil it once, it's unveiled, and when you reroll it, you'll see the new stats right away. In addition to that, third change, when you reroll stats in the future, you get to see what you rolled before you accept the change. So the new process will be you pay the Kuva, and then you get shown a new set of random stat rolls. Then you're allowed to not take the new stats. You can keep your old stats if the new stats are worse or you just don't want them as much. You still have to pay the Kuva, but if you get worse stats by rolling, you don't have to keep them. Fourth change. Likewise, the Kuva cost for rerolling has been toned down a lot on later rolls. I said before that the Kuva cost is exponential, it increases exponentially. So if you only reroll 2 or 3 times, it doesn't really make a difference, but once you start rerolling like 5 or 6 times, it makes a huge difference. You can check out the specific numbers in the blog post below, I can't be bothered, but basically it makes no difference if you reroll like 2 or 3 times, and it makes a big difference if you reroll 5 or more times. Final change. Kuva Siphon missions may be changed so that they are guaranteed to happen on certain tile sets on a cooldown. This is just the consideration they're making, and it's not a confirmed change. Currently, as I was talking about before, Kuva Siphon missions happen on about 25% of Grineer missions over level 30 at random. So maybe that will continue to exist alongside guaranteed spawns, or maybe it'll replace it, I don't really know. So these changes are pretty nice. They facilitate re-rolling a mod a few times without punishing you for trying, and that's great. I think that puts some fun in re-rolling the mods rather than a sense of dread that you will ruin your somewhat okay mod for something terrible. What's a bit of a concern is this idea of Riven Disposition. Now, mind you, on the surface it's a great idea. If Riven mods were just slightly better for meta weapons like your Tonkor, but offensive powerhouses for weapons like your Bratton, we really would get increased weapon diversity in missions, and it would be cool because it would be somewhat unique to each player. This was the dev's stated intention for Riven mods in the first place. The concern is that the changes may interpret, quote, strong weapons in several questionable ways. Not all weapons that seem to have good stats are actually strong, and not all weapons that seem to have bad stats are actually weak. Some weapons appear weak to the community at large, but are actually very strong when used properly, like the Torrid. And other weapons seem vaguely strong, but are pretty much strictly worse versions of other weapons in context, like the Flux Rifle being inferior to the Quanta. You might be thinking, oh, but they're the people that designed and balanced the game, wouldn't they know best? Well, first of all, let me point out that they released this system like this in the first place after having as long as 7 months to think about it, so it is true that balancing weapons based on community perception is relevant and important to some degree. They do have to strike a balance somehow between people thinking that there was no change at all and people thinking that it was the wrong change. But one discouraging aspect of Riven Disposition is that they said that mastery rank requirement will be a factor when deciding the new strength of a weapon's Riven mods. Mastery rank is often completely out of touch with a weapon's power. The Heck is really strong, but has a low mastery rank, and the Telos Boltor is really strong and has a high mastery rank. The Burston is very weak and has a low mastery rank, while the Stradivar is very weak but has a high mastery rank. So, no matter how they factor in mastery rank, it will be the wrong choice for a lot of weapons, and it will dilute the impact of the balance change overall. That's really all I have to say about that stuff. Those are the changes. They could be done correctly, I believe, but the fact that this system was so messed up to begin with makes me kind of doubt that they're going to implement correctly, so we'll have to see what happens. Anyway, before we go, I have one huge grain of salt and one piece of advice. The grain of salt is this. Your meta weapons like Tonkor are already more than powerful enough to get the job done without a strong Riven mod. So it doesn't really matter how strong Riven mods are for weapons like that. It's more a problem that the player base perceives an imbalance than an actual gameplay issue occurring in the game. On the other hand, even in their current form, Riven mods could make certain weaker weapons more powerful and put them on that level of almighty world destroyers like the Tonkor. Just keep in mind that doing even more damage with a weapon that is already one-shotting everything doesn't have a negative effect on gameplay beyond player perception that it has a negative effect on gameplay. Just the thought. Finally, here's my advice given these upcoming changes. Buy some janky Riven mods. Maybe they'll get really strong and it'll be an awesome time and it could be really cool. I have an awesome Riven mod for the Death Machine Rifle, as you see here. And if you would like to see my 7 Forma Death Machine Rifle build, I'll leave a link right here.